Well, thank you, Barbara, for that kind introduction, and delighted to also have such enlightening remarks from the Congressman. We're always honored to have him at the Naval War College and hear his incisive questions and insights. Barbara was right. This is a new briefing that I'll be giving today. It's actually the first time I'm giving it in person, the second time I'm giving it at all. So I hope you will be patient and understanding with me as I prioritize content over delivery, to put it nicely. The framing I'd offer at the beginning here is, as the Congressman alluded to, and Barbara as well, the stakes could scarcely be higher. The timeline could not be more urgent, and your work matters greatly. There, that's my whole point. The Strategic Warm-Up Act for your important activities and events here. But let's start. I think a good map can make a big difference in how we see things. And this map was created by distinguished Naval War College graduate Andrew Rhodes. And what it really shows is how close Taiwan is not just to the PRC, but also to the Philippines and Japan. You can see Okinawa in the bottom right corner here. And similarly, Taiwan is close to many PRC disputes and dangerous activities, and it's closely connected to many of them. This place matters geographically, geostrategically, and other ways that I will raise with you today. My key points will focus on why Taiwan matters and what's at stake for us. And I'll focus on 4 catastrophic consequences if, God forbid, Taiwan were to fall to PRC control. My hope is, by underscoring the severity of these consequences, it can help us redouble our efforts to hold the line on deterrence and ensure that this never happens in the first place, which would be by far the best situation for all concerned. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks the stakes are high here. Here we can see an unclassified slide from the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, which assesses in the bottom line here that China's assimilation of Taiwan would mark a significant shift of the balance of power in the 21st century with global repercussions. And some of those are outlined here in key bullet form. Now, I've made my own effort to call attention to these issues, working with my long-term friend and colleagues, Matt Pottinger, former Deputy National Security Advisor, as well as Gabe Collins. We had an article in Foreign Affairs. We've also had a chapter in Matt's edited volume, The Boiling Moat. And these issues have added to existing discussions in Taiwan. We can see discussion here in the Taipei Times. We're trying to raise awareness and discussion because we believe the efforts made thus far remain insufficient. And we want to be frank about that because the stakes are high and the clock is ticking. Now, much of what I'm going to share with you today is based on a 168-page report that Gabe Collins and I have published through Rice University's Baker Institute. I'm going to hit the wave tops today. There's not time for a lot of detail, but that report, I think, has just about all the detail, at least that we can muster, and we're always happy to talk more. The reason we chose the title we did is it's our assessment that Taiwan's annexation by China would be a defeat from which we and our allies could neither fully retreat nor readily recover, by which we mean with consequences so catastrophic and wide-ranging that there would be no escaping them. In our report, we look back through Cold War history for lessons. We can see how both Douglas MacArthur and Dwight D. Eisenhower consistently emphasized Taiwan's strategic importance, and President Eisenhower did so during the first and second Taiwan Strait crises that came on his watch. Depending on how you count, the next Taiwan Strait crisis would be perhaps called the fifth Taiwan Strait crisis. That and more may well fall to the next sitting U.S. president, and this would be launched by a People's Republic of China that's more powerful and assertive than what President Eisenhower had to deal with in his time on his watch. So in short, we have our work cut out for us. Now, here is a visual from Taiwan's latest defense report. It sums up activities against Taiwan by China since 1949. In our report, we look especially into the first Taiwan Strait crisis of 1954-55, the second Taiwan Strait crisis of 1958, and in both cases, we trace how Eisenhower recognized, underscored, and advocated for Taiwan's strategic importance and held the line accordingly. Now, of course, in recent years, especially over the last 2 decades, we've been dealing with the more dramatic situation that I alluded to. The PRC has already achieved the most dramatic military buildup since World War II, and much of it, purposely, is directed towards Taiwan. We can see a massive hardware ramp up, but China is simultaneously attempting to improve its human, organizational, and operational capabilities to make those key factors equally formidable in practice. And this has taken the shape of a variety of increasingly sophisticated military exercises. Some also designed to demonstrate capability and attempt to invoke fear and deterrence in Taiwan, the United States, and key allies. On this slide, we see a juxtaposition of PLA exercises during the 95-96 Taiwan crisis, during the Clinton administration, and the 2022 some know it as the fourth Taiwan Strait crisis during the Biden-Harris administration. The common theme here is increasing confidence and capabilities. We see some more specifics here from the 2022 exercises, including unprecedented ballistic missile flights over Taiwan. Now, as part of my regular visits to Taiwan, in March of this year, I had the fascinating experience of visiting 2 islands in the 36-island Matsu archipelago out of Taiwan's roughly 168 offshore islands. I overnighted on one of the islands, and I visited the other one by ferry. And I had a chance to speak with many locals there, and they claimed, and I have no reason to doubt, that during the 2022 crisis, it was actually possible to see and hear the overflights of these missiles from these offshore islands incredibly close to the coast of the PRC. Now, we also saw in 2023 some significant military activities signaling in opposition to President Tsai's U.S. transit and meeting with then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. We also saw a series of joint sword exercises, and the dog that didn't bark so much, so to speak, was an announced intention to have some sort of vessel inspection. I worry that this is an indicator of future intent, possibly relevant to a blockade attempt or what China might call a quarantine or something else in an effort to muddy the waters, so to speak. We're facing several significant potential military scenarios. Two major categories. There's the all-domain pressure campaign that continues as we speak right now, all the time, in all ways, but below a certain level of escalation, below kinetic military operations as generally understood. And so the question is, at what point and under what circumstances might things shift to an attempt at kinetic military operations? Here's the context I see. Studying Chinese Communist Party behavior over the last few decades and over the last few years suggests a fairly consistent pattern of attempting the lowest escalation possible to achieve top-level objectives, but also insisting on achieving those objectives. Applied to Taiwan, I think we still see an effort to use the all-domain pressure campaign and its various manifestations to achieve some degree of forward progress as defined by Beijing. However, it's my assessment that Taiwanese society is consistently opposed to PRC demands under Xi Jinping and to this type of pressure. I would also note that Xi Jinping appears to be more impatient than his predecessors. Hence, I believe there's a growing risk of military operation attempts in coming years as Beijing runs out of non-kinetic efforts to have its way with Taiwan, if you will. Now, these campaigns, it's important to underscore, could be complex and overlapping in nature. It's not an either-or situation necessarily. Chinese language open sources, as Barbara alluded to, can show us a lot, especially of the big picture context. As we read through hundreds of pages of PLA doctrine available and sift through the details, one of the things that really comes into focus is a strong emphasis on missiles. And we see that echoed in China's PLA actual development, deployment, and training. But it's not all high-end extreme capabilities. There's also a low side that in many ways is a soft underbelly. And what I'm referring to here is CMSI research regarding PRC amphibious invasion scenarios and capabilities development vis-a-vis Taiwan. And fortunately for us and the task before us, the PLA remains deficient in amphibious lift as conventionally defined. They have the shipbuilding industry capability to really ramp up smaller amphibious vessels. Maybe they will. They haven't done that so far. Instead, what they're doing is emphasizing maritime militia vessels and a variety of roll-on, roll-off ferries to augment amphibious lift. And the good news is those are less capable platforms with more vulnerabilities that we can target. Now let's look through some of the consequences from the report should Taiwan fall. And we spend a lot of time talking about semiconductors because in our view, this is one of the greatest consequences, the most far-reaching that would happen. We believe that an attempted PRC kinetic operation against Taiwan would likely cause an interruption in the world's supply of the most advanced semiconductors, thereby imposing devastating damage on key industries, the global economy, and even human progress writ large. And I don't say human progress writ large lightly. Advances today in technology, in which many of you are involved, are critically important, dependent on abundant high-power computational capacity. Whether we're talking about AI, as already mentioned this morning, medicine, drug discovery, material science with green energy technology, or in our very own defense industry area, for example, hypersonics. And AI, as many of you know, is extremely energy intensive. So it's important to underscore that inferior substitutes and stopgaps for advanced semiconductors would both decrease performance and require significantly more electricity, which would impose increased energy costs, economic strain, and climate security risk. Non-military stakeholders need to know and care about these issues, and we need to help them understand. Taiwan really is central to semiconductors. It produces roughly 90% of the world's advanced semiconductors, making it what I would call the OPEC++ of advanced semiconductors. And we further argue in the report with documentation that semiconductors, even more than oil, are crucial for today's global economy. So their disruption could well trigger the worst global economic decline since World War II, possibly even worse than that, depending on how you measure it. Again, this is vital, and stakeholders across government and across society need to be fully aware of this, fully engaged with this, and fully invested in the importance of this issue. The second consequence we assess were Taiwan to fall is the risk of the PRC leveraging its even greater economic and trade clout to coerce its neighbors and exclude the United States and its allies from key opportunities. Exclusionary trade practices throughout East Asia, economic coercion to bend other nations to its will, especially its economically vital neighbors. Significant damage to and pressure on global supply chains, and perhaps also empowering a de-dollarization push on the part of China in a way that China was not able to achieve before. Make no mistake, we're already up against a very significant challenge from China. The U.S. and the PRC are almost at parity. The PRC is almost at parity with the U.S. In economic terms, broadly interpreted. But this would get far worse in practice were Taiwan to fall. Already, China's economic output has exceeded the entire remainder of the Asia-Pacific region, the Asia-Pacific region ex-China. Part of what this shows is without strong U.S. involvement and deterrence, the region alone will not be able to balance China effectively. The U.S. is essential to this. There is no option of a, quote, self-containing problem, as some have described with wishful thinking. And it goes beyond the immediate East Asia region or even the Indo-Pacific. Increasingly, as I would put it, China is becoming the gigafactory of the emerging axis of autocracy, or whatever you want to call it. This PRC capability, manufacturing capability, military relevant in nature, is supporting Russia in its pernicious activities. And over time, we may see support increasing for North Korea and Iran. And were Taiwan to fall, this could get a lot worse very quickly. Again, even in recent years, we've seen China trying to implement economic coercion against its neighbors, key U.S. allies. This would get far worse were Taiwan to fall. And in Southeast Asia, in particular, in ASEAN nations, the vulnerabilities are truly acute. And China could really attempt to run the tables there to the great detriment of the nature of the region and the nature of our access to the region, including in terms of economic and trade terms. Now, moving this in a more specific military direction, China's military manufacturing prowess matters greatly. In many ways, replenishment deters, and if necessary, wins wars. So obviously, there's a lot of difficult work remaining for us to do here, but as we do it, we need to be constantly reminded of the consequences of if China were able to seize Taiwan and take advantage of those infusions to China's defense industrial base. And we need to get creative, keep being creative in ways that we haven't necessarily fully been in the past. History has shown us how much military manufacturing matters, especially in wartime. And I think in-region industrial partnerships with our key allies will be critical in certain ways. We've already seen key leadership from the U.S. government, including from the Secretary of the Navy on this, and I think we're going to need to do more on this as the challenge from China mounts rapidly. Now, I've been talking about allies. Let's look more specifically at those alliances. There are so many ways in which we benefit from these key alliances in region, with Japan, with the Republic of Korea, also critically with the Philippines and with Australia. But it's a two-way street. Our allies need to have confidence that we have their back regarding what they fear most, which is coercion and potentially attack from China, including a massive conventional attack that could be strategic or even existential for them in nature, even if technically it is not nuclear in nature. That is critical. It's our assessment from our report that if Taiwan were unfortunately to fall on our watch, this would, at a minimum, gravely strain the underpinnings and the credibility of these key alliances. And Taiwan's fall could help the PRC severely threaten economic, informational, and strategic lifelines of Japan, South Korea, and other regional nations. This would be critical to them. It would also be critical to us, and the impact on the alliances would be devastating. And our allies, just like our adversaries, are watching very carefully for indicators of the military balance of power. If you measure maritime power in terms of VLS tubes, the U.S. Navy is still significantly ahead of the PLA Navy. But if you look at the trend lines and the relentless geographic focus of the PLA Navy compared to America's global dispersion and the multiple severe scenarios that the congressman mentioned, then things get a lot more difficult and a lot more concerning for our allies. So working with them and developing our own capabilities further to urgently shore up deterrence of the PRC is critical. Finally, it's worth emphasizing that PRC expansion is far from guaranteed to stop with Taiwan, should Taiwan fall. For many reasons we've outlined in our report, we believe that capturing Taiwan would give the PRC a second wind and new capabilities. And given the historical grievances that the PRC, the Chinese Communist Party, propagandizes to legitimate its rule, we believe that other key regional disputes would heat up severely and become even more concerning than before. The fourth consequence has to do with the potential for military threats and a cascading nuclear proliferation around key areas of the world. In short, Japan and South Korea are very concerned about how their nations may be safeguarded, and they're very technologically capable. Right now, they would pay tremendous costs were they to develop nuclear weapons, so our alliance with them is the best guarantee of their security. However, something as catastrophic as Taiwan's fall could shake the foundations of that current calculus. And potential for the spread of nuclear weapons development and augmentation would not stop with China's immediate region. There are spillover effects into South Asia and the Middle East that would be concerning as well. So, as I wrap this up here, where may Xi take all this? What are the key dynamics, and what can we do to prevent this from ever happening in the first place? Xi has grand, ambitious goals for China, but up front, the key concerning goal concerns achieving some sort of control over Taiwan. What Xi's up against are mounting headwinds, a rapid slowing in the rate of the growth in PRC national power. And this, in my view, makes Xi a man in a hurry who's running out of time. Unfortunately for us, with each passing year over the next few years, he's going to have even more capabilities than he did before at his disposal. As a consequence, I believe we're facing an urgent maximum test far earlier than would be comfortable or ideal for us. But that's the core nature of the reality. China's power is peaking, making the next few years particularly critical. If we fail to maintain sufficient effective deterrence, then I believe that the PRC is likely to attempt annexation of Taiwan before this decade is out. I think it's that stark. Now, a few words on 2027, because there are American assessments of this which are very valid, but to use, I guess, current popular terminology, we need to recenter the discourse on what Xi Jinping's actual policy is. And I should have updated this slide. His birthday was June 15th. So now I should say the 71-year-old leader's personal abilities, preparations, and available national power are all peaking. As a man in a hurry to achieve this historic objective, he has charged his armed forces with meeting the Centennial Military Building Goal. And as the Pentagon's China Military Power Report explains very accurately and effectively, a large part of this goal, this capabilities development deadline, is focused on giving him a full toolbox of military capabilities to be able to credibly threaten, or if necessarily execute, the major campaign options, the full range of campaign options against Taiwan that I described at the beginning of this presentation. The Joint Firepower Strike Campaign, the Joint Blockade Campaign, the Joint Island Landing Campaign, or some combination thereof. If we read the tea leaves of PRC sources, we can see very clearly how this is being operationalized as a top priority in China's top-down Leninist system. From an outside, highly informed view, we can see from Admiral Aquilino's final testimony to Congress this spring how this is playing out in a military development sense. And I'm just going to read these words because these must stay with us and inform the urgency of our efforts. Admiral Aquilino said, quote, "All indications point to the PRC meeting President Xi Jinping's directive to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. Furthermore, the PLA's actions indicate their ability to meet Xi's preferred timeline to unify Taiwan with mainland China by force if directed." Incredibly important. Those words shout out to me, and I think they should shout out to everyone. So where are we at? Xi, based on every assessment I can make, based on his background, based on his formative years, based on his father's experiences, based on his interactions with Taiwanese business people, etc., I think he's a rational actor. He's incredibly ambitious, he's willing to push the envelope, but he's always calculating, and he wants a predictable cost. So the bottom line is, history is really unspooling here. It's not been written conclusively. Things could go either way soon, and it's really up to us. So in closing, I've attempted to make the case to you, in part by drawing on my recent report, that Taiwan falling under PRC control would be a defeat from which we could neither fully retreat nor readily recover. So the bottom line that I'll leave you with is the stakes could scarcely be higher, the timeline could not be more urgent, and your work matters tremendously. So it's an honor to speak with you today. It's a great pleasure. I look forward to your questions and your insights. Thank you very much.